With the constant question of who is the main villain of Jojolion constantly on the tongues of fans around the world, it doesn't take much for most of us to come to our own theories and conclusions of the identity of the main villain. Unlike previous JoJo's Bizarre Adventure parts, Part 8 has kept the fans wondering for years now who the main villain could be. In most of the other JoJo parts, it's been made apparent who the main villain was pretty early on, with the exception of Kira in Part 4 being revealed midway through the part rather than near the beginning. Araki has done a great job at convincing the readers that the main villain of Jojolion could be anyone. Many names have circulated around the internet over the years: Kira, Damo, Jobin, Kato, the head doctor, and most recently, Toru. Hell, once I even heard the theory that Josuke himself might end up being the main villain in some sort of strange plot twist. These are theories I have heard over the years, but the most recent and most likely answer comes down to two potential names: Toru and Kato. But what exactly makes a JoJo antagonist a JoJo antagonist? Keep in mind this video will have major spoilers for all previous JoJo parts, as well as everything up to Jojolion chapter 106, which is the most recent chapter as of the recording of this video. All of the previous 7 main JoJo baddies have had one thing in common: they all want to shape the world to fit their own vision. We're going to go through all 7 and figure out the general idea behind each of the antagonist's goals, and then discuss the similarities between them. Starting off with Dio, he was the main antagonist in parts 1 and 3. In both parts, he wanted absolute power to rule over mankind. This started off pretty small, with him simply wanting to make Jonathan Joestar's life hell, make himself look like the good child, and eventually inherit the estate and wealth of George Joestar. This later expanded to him discovering the power of the Stone Mask and evolving his goal from simply inheriting the Joestar's wealth to taking over the entire world. Of course, this goal was short-lived at the time anyway, thanks to Jonathan's sacrifice. From start to finish, Dio looked down on humans as lower beings, and he saw them simply as food and playthings. In Part 3, his goal was pretty much the same: to power himself up as much as possible using various people's blood, including Joestar blood, and gaining the power to achieve his goal of ruling the world. This goal later was changed slightly in Part 6, but we'll get to that soon. The goal of Kaz from Part 2 was to take the Red Stone of Asia for himself, using its power to upgrade the Stone Mask, which he and his people had created many years ago. Kaz's main goal was to become immune to the power of the sun, and gaining power from the Red Stone of Asia would grant him this, among other insanely powerful abilities such as spontaneous creation of life. Once immune to the ultraviolet light from the sun, Kaz was set as the ultimate life form, putting the foot in the door to beginning his goal of overcoming humanity and ruling the world. Kira from Part 4 showed up halfway through as the main villain, and was wanted for the murder of multiple women over the years in Morio. However, no one knew who he was, and no one knew his face. His main goal was for the world to not know of his identity, whilst continuing to murder young women. This was his way of controlling the world, because he knew his identity was unknown by everyone at the time of his first appearance. He knew he could manipulate the world by becoming a store clerk, meeting up with friends, going to the sandwich shop. He lived his day-to-day life like a regular person, whilst behind the scenes he was conducting his murderous acts. He had the world under his control. The world did not know who the killer was. That was until Josuke and his crew unveiled him as the true serial killer. Kira's goal of controlling the world by hiding his identity was put to an end. Diavolo from Part 5 decided to circulate drugs around Italy as the leader of the Mafia. His identity, too, stayed hidden until near the end of the part. His way of controlling the world was distributing his drugs, earning money, and staying hidden quietly in the shadows. Finding his daughter Trish and eliminating her was the only obstacle stopping him from having complete control over the people of Italy, and that was, in his mind, his way of controlling the world. After all, he could have eventually moved his drug distribution to other countries if he was given the time and the money. Over time, I don't doubt that he would have maybe achieved this. Though it is on a much smaller scale to controlling the entire world, Diavolo controlled a lot of Italy, with his drugs even ending up in the hands of children. Pucci from Part 6's goal was the same as Dio's goal, except by Part 6, Araki had decided to expand on Dio's goal a lot more. It was not simply to rule the world like it was in Part 1 and 3. By this point, we learned through Pucci and his memories that Dio's true goal was to achieve heaven. Pucci took on this goal as his own once Dio had been defeated, and this goal was to achieve complete happiness for everyone in the world. This happiness that was granted to the people of Earth would be to give them full knowledge of their future and what was to transpire throughout their lives. This was so that humanity could be happy and content with what was to come in their lives by having them already live out their life once over, replacing them back in the time and place that they were in prior, and then having their future lay dormant in their subconscious memories, granting them tranquility and happiness with the full knowledge of their futures. This goal being achieved would have been done by Pucci for Dio. It may have been for the people, but some would say that happiness would have been more like torture. This was Pucci's way of shaping and controlling the world to how he and Dio wanted. The goal of Valentine in Part 7 was to make sure that he gained the absolute power of the Saint's corpse, and as the President of the United States, he would make America reign over the rest of the world. The power that America would then hold would make America the greatest and most powerful country in the world, and with Valentine at the head of the table, he could control the world and shape it how he wants. Now that we've finished with that little recap, you will have noticed a common theme with these main villains. Each of them wanted to control humanity in some form. Though the form may look different in some of the villains' eyes, these forms still ultimately end up being the total control of the entire world in some way. Another aspect that the main antagonists had was stand abilities, of course excluding cars. Each of the main villains that possessed stands in past parts have had abilities related to time and space. Sometimes these abilities were already present in their stands, such as Dio with the World and Diavolo with King Crimson, or they would gain them later on via various other means. Unless Araki decides to mix things up drastically with Jojolion, which is entirely possible, we can safely use this common theme as a teller for who the Jojolion main villain may be. Now, using this knowledge, we can look at various Jojolion main villain candidates, goals and stands to determine whether or not their goals fit this common main villain theme. Will their goals be on a grand enough scale to rival the goals of other main JoJo antagonists? I will go through the names I listed earlier on in the video, and these names are the ones I have seen circulating the internet for the last couple of years. First off, we'll start with one of the earlier theories, Yoshikage Kira. This one is pretty self-explanatory at this point. At first, it was shown that Kira did want some form of control over people, torturing Ojiro Sasame enough to convince him to bite off all of his own fingers. However, Kira's goal was revealed to be the acquisition of the new Rokakaka fruit, working alongside Josefume Kujo to help save his mother Holly Kira. His stand was almost the same as Killer Queen from Part 4, minus having bites the dust, so therefore no time or space powers here. Plus, Kira is already fused with Josefume once Jojolion begins. We all know by this point that Kira is not the main villain, but I just wanted to list off every name that I have seen theorized online so far. Another name I heard in various theories was Josuke himself would be the main villain. I think this theory was more of a what-if idea rather than a theory backed up by evidence. It's a theory that may have potentially started near the beginning of Jojolion, back when you knew he was half Kira. By that point, the viewers most likely worried that Kira would be evil yet again in this part, making Josuke have evil tendencies, leading him to become a villain. By the current chapters though, we know this is not the case, and he has adopted Kira's goal of saving Holly. That crosses Josuke off this list. Tamaki Damo was the head of the first group of rock humans that we became acquainted with in Jojolion. Before he was revealed, all we as viewers knew was that there was a rock human organization looking for the new Rokakaka that Josefume and Kira had created and used to fuse together. Damo being the head of this group was revealed eventually, and once he appeared, fans expected him to be the main villain of the series due to his position in the organization. His stand Vitamin C was able to soften living organisms, and whilst this does not directly relate to time or space, with some crazy explanation it could have potentially come under the space manipulation category. Perhaps he could have used space abilities to remove objects from inside people's bodies, making them flat and soft, who knows. This would have been far too anticlimactic though, so the viewers would have known by this point that he was in fact not the main villain. His goal was the shared goal of the entire rock human organization, which is seemingly the production and selling of the Rokakaka fruit to gain an immense amount of money, plus the acquisition of the new Rokakaka as well. This could be seen as some form of control over the world, similar to how Diavolo could be seen as starting off a chain of ruling the world via selling illegal drugs. At this point, Jobin was a name on everyone's tongue as well, as he had been acting pretty shady, which leads us onto the next candidate. Higashikata Jobin is one of the names that has been theorized to be the main villain for a long time, and believe it or not, is still being considered a potential main villain candidate even in his current state in the manga. First of all, Jobin's stand is heat-based and has not shown any particularly strong abilities worthy of being the main villain. This also includes showing no time or space ability potential. Again, Araki might take the main villain stand in a new direction with Jojolion, or he may be hiding some of Jobin's abilities. However, I truly believe Jobin's stand is heat-based and that is where it ends. His goal is simply to acquire the new Rokakaka fruit to save his son, Tsurugi, from certain death, without having Jobin's father, Norisuke, having to sacrifice himself. Jobin simply wants to break the Higashikata curse that has plagued the family for generations, and he teamed up with the Rock Human group to get closer to the new Rokakaka and his goal. Jobin truly saw Norisuke and Josuke as people who were trying to get in the way of his plans by taking on the Rock Human organization. Jobin knew his and his father's outlooks on various things were polar opposites to each other. He knew that talking to Norisuke would yield no results, so keeping quiet and going behind the family's back was the best way to achieve his goals in his eyes. Unfortunately, Jobin's fate has so far been shown to be not so good, as he currently lays bleeding profusely inside the Higashikata estate and is presumed dead. Higashikata Kato is another name which has been circulating a lot over the last few years since she was first shown, and is once again being discussed due to her most recent reappearance in Jojolion chapter 106. First off, what we know of her goal is that she wants to protect her family first and foremost, especially Jobin. She even instructed Jobin to keep climbing and leave others at the bottom. This sounds like the beginning of a possible want to rule the world in some form. Keep climbing, as in to reach the top of the world, and leave others at the bottom, as in to be above them and stay that way. She protected Jobin and went to prison for 15 years. She was divorced by Norisuke due to her supposed crimes. Kato believes that the success of the Higashikata fruit parlor is all down to her, and that she deserves to be compensated for the 15 years that she was imprisoned for due to the fruit parlor's success. She also informs Jobin that she believes Norisuke and Josuke are up to something that may hinder their plans. This just sounds to me like she is in on Jobin's plans to save his son Tsurugi from the Higashikata curse, and also to save the family as a whole. After all, Kato has been shown to deeply care about her family. When she appears at the end of chapter 106, she comes from within the Higashikata house and is in tears. She most likely found Jobin's supposedly dead body and has now also found Toru's dying body crawling towards her after he ate a new Rokakaka fruit. She may attempt a fusion between Jobin and Toru to save her son's life. That is just how deeply she cares about her family, especially Jobin. I don't believe for a second that she has ulterior motives other than gaining compensation from Norisuke for her missed years from the fruit parlor's success, as well as working with Jobin to move towards a curse-free future for their family. Yes, this may mean that she was also working with the Rock Human organization too. However, we were only shown her to be discussing with Jobin briefly over the phone a few times, especially about Norisuke and Josuke's plot. So it's entirely possible she was not deeply involved with the Rock Humans and purely just worked as an advisor for Jobin. Her stand does in fact fit the space portion of the time and space main villain stand theme, being able to hide items in the middle of a deck of cards, seemingly in some sort of pocket dimension. However, remember time and space abilities are not always limited specifically to main villains. Ringo Road-Again and his stand Mandom from part 7 possessed a time rewinding ability. Whilst he was a cool minor villain, he was not the main antagonist. This is most likely the case for Kato as well. I have a feeling she will cause Toru to be revived after his damage by fusing him with Jobin to save her son out of desperation, especially since she probably does not know at this point who Toru actually is. She probably just witnessed him eat a new Rokakaka fruit and that was all she knows. This fusion would cause a massive power boost for Toru, potentially evolving his stand. At the time of Akefu Satoru's reveal, he too was made out to be the head of the Rock Human organization and the main antagonist. I truly believed when he was revealed that we had finally seen the main villain of Jojolion. His supposed stand power appeared to abuse space abilities by making sure that items would collide with anyone who intended to pursue him. However, it was later revealed that the head doctor himself, Akefu Satoru, was in fact the stand of Toru, so yet again, the line of main villain reveal fakeouts continues. Now we are up to the biggest candidate for main villain we have seen up to this point. In fact, many people are still torn between Jobin, Toru and Kato being the main villain of Jojolion. Personally, looking at all of their goals, Toru has the best case at being the main villain. Firstly, he is the supposed leader of the Rock Human organization, using his stand as the face of the TG University Hospital, keeping his real identity secret. He has been manipulating people from the shadows for years, as shown when he followed Yasuho around for most of her life, keeping her close so he could abuse her stand Paisley Park to help achieve his goals. This is a form of control, though it may be a pretty small form of control at this stage. Let's jump back to chapter 68, where Urban Gorilla goes on a tirade about the Rokakaka. He states that the Rokakaka seems like a great thing for humans, a way to give them health and money. However, he states that the Rokakaka is actually not terribly compatible with humans due to the fact that humans are made as carbon-based life forms. He insinuates that the Rokakaka fruit exists purely for the use of rock humans, which are silicon-based life forms. The fact that humans eating them exchanges a piece of their body to heal another, turning that part of the body into stone, kinda proves that the connections of the Rokakaka to the silicone-based life forms is stronger. Urban Gorilla states that the new Rokakaka will bring an entire new world to the rock humans. Carbon-based life forms have ruled the world for years, and it's been shown that rock humans have been in hiding and working from the shadows as long as they've been able to survive. What more would rock humans want than to be accepted as humans have been? Even more so, the Rock Human organization seems to want more than that. They want the new Rokakaka to open an entirely new future for their species. This future, as hinted by Urban Gorilla, is that humans will constantly sink downwards whilst rock humans rise to the top of the world. Even though Toru's true goal has not yet been revealed, Urban Gorilla was one of his top scientists and most trusted confidants. He is the type of associate that Toru would have trusted with his true goal for their race, and I truly believe that goal is to sit on top of the world and rule over all of the carbon-based life forms as the dominant species. The Earth is heavily silicone-based, so it makes sense that Toru's goal would be to quote-unquote take back the Earth for themselves. Of course, at this point this is all just theory. We haven't had enough context from Toru himself to back up this theory, but I truly do hope that we gain more knowledge from him about his true motives eventually. Though I'm pretty certain we can use Urban Gorilla's explanation as a basis for Toru's goal. So therefore, I truly believe that Toru is in fact the main villain of Jojolion. Even his stand sort of fits the space ability, in the sense that space can be warped in any way he needs to protect himself from any form of damage, as long as the incoming attack exists. Plus, depending on how old Toru is, it may be entirely possible that Toru's Calamity ability was the cause for Johnny Joestar's death, as well as the reason why the Higashikata curse began affecting the family in the first place. This is all theory, like I said before, and I completely understand if some of you are still set on Jobin or Kato being the main villain or villains of the part, but I just personally don't buy it. Toru needs more context to his character and his goals other than just money. In fact, I think I may have figured out exactly what Urban Gorilla meant when he said that the new Rokakaka opens up a whole new world for the rock humans. Let's go all the way back to when Josuke came into existence. The moment Kira and Josefumi fused, an earthquake swallowed them up under the grounds of the Higashikata estate. After Kira swallowed the new Rokakaka and equivalent exchange began, they became buried underneath a mass of silicon-based earth. This is something that had to happen to create the fusion. However, now we have seen that Toru has eaten a new Rokakaka. If he manages to reach Jobin's body, they may fuse like Josefumi and Kira did, rather than how Yasuho and Joshu did. Bear with me here. Remember, Toru is silicon-based, like most of the Earth is. What if Toru would be able to completely fuse with another being into a new form without the need to be buried underground due to his biology being silicon-based? If this is the case and Kato takes Jobin's body over to Toru, Toru may completely be able to absorb parts of Jobin, healing himself and becoming half Toru, half Jobin. Kato would be pleased as her son would be alive again inside Toru, and this would heal Toru as well. It just seemed quite anticlimactic that Toru ate a new Rokakaka but then went straight down again in chapter 106 anyway. There must be more to come, and I truly believe Kato will attempt to fuse Jobin with Toru to save her son's life again. Toru will also probably gain a new ability due to his fusion with Jobin, mixing Wonder of You and Speed King together. This may create a space manipulating ability that can use heat as a basis. Perhaps being able to mix heat and space warping abilities together to be able to manipulate atoms, smashing them together in a wave of heat and creating a new Big Bang? I can't say that I did any Big Bang research before writing this theory down, however, so this may just sound like complete BS. We'll leave it there for now on that theory. We'll see what happens next month in chapter 107. Will Kato bring Jobin's dying body to Toru to save her son's life? If so, does this make Toru the only main villain? If he fuses with Jobin, Toru and Jobin will both become the main villain together, and with Kato being the reason for this fusion in the first place, she surely will be held accountable for the creation of the main villain of Jojolion, perhaps putting her at the same standing also. Plus, we haven't seen Josuke and Toru face off head to head yet, so I truly believe we still need to see that fight. And that fight would also be a fused person versus a fused person, so that could be a really interesting climactic final battle. What do you guys think? Who do you think is the main villain of Jojolion? Do you also believe Toru is the main villain, or is he just a build-up for the true main antagonist? Also, let me know your theories on what might happen to Jobin, Kato, the new Rokakaka, and Toru. I'd love to hear your thoughts. If you enjoyed this video, then it'd be great if you could leave a thumbs up on it down below and maybe even subscribe to keep up with regular uploads. The chapter review for Jojolion 106 will come out soon, but I was too excited to keep these theories in my head, so you got this video first. I also have a series where I analyse various stands throughout JoJo, where I talk about the different aspects in detail. I explain their appearance, abilities, and personality traits, etc, etc. If you want to check that series out, the playlists for the videos are in the description down below. Thank you again so much for watching, but until next time, Bizarre Star Platinum out.